I'm Cathrine Sneed, and I appreciate being able to come back. When I was here last, it was, I don't know if you can hear me. I was here in 1996, I believe, with Alice Waters and her group that were going to cook for 800 people. It was quite an introduction to you all. And Amy was correct. All of us have, or was it the other one? Anyway, Wes Jackson, if Wes Jackson said, "Will you?" I would say yes. And so I said yes. And I said, well, how am I going to do it? But I'm here, so thank you. When I started our program in 1982, I was very fortunate to have a job. And I think everyone, we've talked about a lot of things. I have to start by talking about my grandfather. My grandfather went to Chicago. Why? In 1919, him and thousands of African Americans, black folks, came up from the South. They went to Chicago and lived in the boarding houses there. From there, my grandfather enlisted into the Army, fought in World War I, came home, he couldn't vote. My father enlisted in the Army in 1941, came home, he couldn't vote. But both my father and my grandfather went to Chicago, went to the Army for one reason, and that was for work. And at the time, that's how black folks could work, for sure, and work in a way that was respected and appreciated. And I grew up with that. I grew up an Army brat. In our house, there was one color, and it was green. So when I told my father that I wanted to go and save the world, he was like, yeah, right. You're going to be an Army Nurse. We're not going to go with those, excuse me, communists and socialists and do stop the war, any of that other jazz. We're Army first. I ran away from home. I didn't run away from home. I walked away from home. I hitchhiked away from home. 16 and pregnant, from New Jersey, from Newark, New Jersey, to San Francisco. I continue to tell people that I meet that was one of the stupidest things I've ever done. I'm very fortunate. I've done, like some people, many stupid things. I'm fortunate to be able to stand here and tell you about it, because I didn't have more than a few people trying to kill me all the way, but I made it. I made it again because I believed that if I let my son be born in Newark, New Jersey, he would not have an opportunity. And so I was very motivated. And I had decided that since my father and my stepmother, because my mother died when she was 38, when I was 8, I had decided that I wanted to change the world. I grew up with 10 brothers and sisters that my mother and father ferried around the world. I was born in Germany. My brother was born in France. Every one of us were born on Army bases. My father's buried in Arlington. And so I consider myself a true American in the best sense of the word. And so today I continue to work for the San Francisco Sheriff's Department. The deputy sheriffs and others ask me every day, when are you going to retire? What are you doing here? I've had people pull over and say, we don't let women do that stuff. And I'm like, try to make me stop, please, please. But let me tell you what we do. And Darlene Wolf, who did a lot of work putting this together, kept asking me, what was the name of my talk? And we have one phone line at the farm, at the jail, and half the time I have my phone in my pocket. I don't look at it, so I don't know what she was sending me. But and on the plane it didn't work, the internet didn't work or getting there, so I still didn't know. But my talk is about work. Because I think when we talk about urban and we talk about rural, what I've learned is that's what this is about. You all are working, and what I've been trying to do with my life is put people to work and keep them working. and to help them to understand that work is good. The work is something that helps us to keep our head up, but it also helps us to do stuff. What I love is being able to say, as I did this summer and survived, to 243 13 to 15-year-olds, you guys, we are going to work. We're going to be pulling weeds. We're going to be dragging brush. We're going to keep this place from burning down, because there are 953 people in that jail. And this farm where we're located, which is really a jail, that's 145 acres, that has gotten no care, no work other than the work that me and my staff have put into it for the last 35 years. So there's no one clearing the brush, keeping the place from burning down but us. And we do have a few tractors, but mainly the stuff is done by hand. And it was a real wonderful thing, particularly this year, to have 143 13 to 15-year-old boys. And when I told them to do something, to have them skip off and say, this is so much fun, can we do it, can we do this, can we do that? Every day, every single day. But also to see what happens when they couldn't dig that hole and I could. And I could say, excuse me, I'm 63, and if I can do it, you can do it. And then to have them do it. And then to have them say, whoa, you sure are spry. And when I tell them that I'm 100, because that's what I usually say, I'll say, I'm 100 and I can do it, so if I can do it, you can do it. One day, when I came in, the girls, the 200 girls, all day they had been really quiet and sort of reserved, and usually they're, Miss Cathrine, can we do this? Can we do that? Every minute, as we know that wonderful children do. But today they weren't talking to me, and they weren't talking to me because we had just come back from Hetch Hetchy, Yosemite, where in a week we clear 7 miles of road. We cut down the trees, the invasive plants, clear underneath the transmission lines. We've been making a fire break from one area of Yosemite to the other area, for those of you that know Yosemite. But anyway, 7 miles in a week with groups of people every year for the last 15 years. And so we had just finished doing that and had survived another time and gotten home. And there's a lot of poison oak. I'm the only one that gets it. And so all the time. And so my face is very swollen. I'm at work, I got 2 black eyes, it looks like. No one would come near me. And then finally at the end of the day, one of the girls came over and she's like, Miss Cathrine, we're so upset. And I was like, what is wrong? Well, who beat you up? Like, this is poison oak. This is what we get when we work in poison oak. But as you can see, it's not stopping me. Because what I know is what you know, and that is there has been many things in our lives tougher than poison oak. And if we can't overcome poison oak, I don't know what to tell you. And so I think it's real important that, as Amy said, and as I think I read about it, I read when Wendell Berry's book, when I was at UC Santa Cruz, learning how to be a farmer, because I sure as heck didn't know anything about farming, about work and the importance of work. And to be able to take folks who regard working in nature as something bad, as something that's reminiscent. Our sheriff told me the other day that someone criticized her at a meeting saying that I take these young people and treat them like slaves and they're doing this slave work. And I was like, the difference is these children are getting $14 an hour, which is our minimum wage, $14 an hour, and they're paying the rent. They're buying food for their family. They are buying their clothes for school. So it's not slave work. What it is, it's an introduction to work. And unfortunately, I think as we talk about how we change things, as Americans, I think we have to do a better job of understanding that all of us have to work. All of us have to begin the conversation to make sure people understand the importance of work and what happens when people or peoples are not allowed to work for whatever reason. And that's my history. My history is working in the San Francisco jail and knowing that the men and women who were there when I was working in the jail with them would spend their life going back and forth, while we paid an amazing amount of money to keep them in a cage that wasn't going to change when they got out. And so after 2 years of doing that, when I first got my job at the Sheriff's Department in 1980 on April 15th, the first thing that I realized was that the people in our jail looked just like me and had a similar history. They had little kids. They had been unemployed. They had been on welfare. They had been homeless. But the difference for me was that every day I saw my father go to work. Every day I saw my mother go to work. And so, but then while they were going to work, they were like, and you better go to school, and you better do this, and you better do that, which is wonderful. But I had that history. I had that experience. But I also had somewhat of a middle-class upbringing. My father, because he was working, we had a house. Every day we ate. We went to the commissary. We went and got food. He was able to take care of us. My mother was able to help to take care of us. And what I have met in my career are hundreds and thousands of people who didn't have that. And now the result from them is that they're in a cage and we're paying for it. And so what I have tried to do, and I'm trying to talk quick just in case my time runs over, what I've tried to do is help people to see that they don't have to spend their life in that cage, that they can come out of that cage and learn how to work, learn how to get something done, get paid for it, and go forward. That's what happened with me. Sheriff Michael Hennessy gave me a job. With that job, my kids had food every day. Before that, we had hot dogs, we had potato chips, we had Kool-Aid, and I could feed them on $3.10. And that was good, because most of the time I didn't have $3.10. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with a kidney disease in 1982 that I began to see, well, wait a minute. My son always has ear infections. Why is that? Well, gee, because the vegetables that he's eating is they're negligible at best. When I started giving them vegetables, when I could buy vegetables and cook them, that changed. I wasn't taking him to the emergency room with the high fever, with the earache. Today he is huge and a math teacher. That's what I say. But in coming down that road, taking care of those kids, seeing the people that I worked with, having this illness that they said was going to kill me, being able to bring the people outside of the jail, because inside the jail, I could tell they had an illness too, and it was killing them. And Michael Hennessy, like everyone else, thought, gee, they said she's going to be dead, so she will be. So, yeah, take them prisoners out, please. But I went into remission. And so I didn't die. And so what happened instead was thousands of prisoners worked in the farm. We created a farm. And when I saw Amigo Bob came out to look at our farm in, I think it was 1989, and he's like, good luck with that, but you can do it. And today we produce, or we have been able to produce, and I don't know how exactly because our farm has no funding. We produce 100 tons of vegetables that we give to seniors, people older than me. Well, we give them to seniors, we give them to families, the vegetables are given away in pantries in schools throughout the city. But these people stand in line for hours. We come at 1. There's this one place, and the Commission of Aging secretary called me to tell me that the seniors were fighting over the last box of kale because there was only one box of kale left. And the two seniors that were at it, one was 92 and one was 91. And Edna said, Catherine, you got to grow more vegetables. You got to get more to us, because these guys, they can't afford to buy a $4 bunch of collards. They can't afford to buy vegetables. And without the vegetables, they're not going to have the health. That's true for the kids in the pantries as well. But what I've seen is that with Edna from the Commission on Aging, when she called the mayor and the Board of Supervisors to say, Catherine needs to be able to grow more vegetables, they made sure I continue to have my job, which I'm thankful for. But unlike you guys, I'm paid by the city. I'm paid by the Sheriff's Department. Our folks get paid from a contract from our utility company to remove the invasive weeds. We've created a native plant nursery so that we can give and plant native plants in San Francisco's 1,400 acres of reservoirs that are throughout the city. We have a contract now with the city, and have had it now for 15 years, for $2 million. With that $2 million, I'm able to employ 243 kids for number one in the summer. But during the school year, about 40 of us work on the farm. Work not just on the farm, but we only really work on the farm on Mondays. On the other days, we're working on the reservoirs. And that's how we are able to pay them. People would say to me over all these long years, well, you got to get more people that look like you out there farming. What I know is what you know, and that is unless farming or growing food or doing whatever it is we're doing out here can pay us, how are we going to do that? And we are very fortunate to be able to have a contract now that puts the money into the people's pockets, that allows me then a few hours a week of their help on the farm so that we can make sure that we can grow 100 tons of vegetables. But it does require, like you know, every day, all day long. And so I work every day, all day long. I start at 6, I end at 7. And the deputy's like, why are you out here and it's so late? The coyotes are going to get you. The bobcats are going to get you. The mountain lions are going to get you. And why aren't you home anyway? Because when I say because the plants need us, one of the speakers talked about what happens when finally people start to get sort of what you're doing. The deputy sheriffs didn't talk to me for years because they thought I was just working with the dirtball crooks. And what we were doing, once we started growing and bringing in broccoli, and they could see that these people who were the dirtball crooks were producing broccoli, and we were producing food that people rely on. We were putting kids to work, that we planted 10,000 trees throughout the city. They began to see, okay, we see maybe what you're doing. Why don't we do more of that? Why don't you make sure that people understand that people do want to work, that there is a way within nature, within farming, within gardening, to help people who don't know how to work, young and old, to learn that so that we can get that work done. But there are, and there must be, creative ways to get the money to make it happen. But also we can't continue to just talk to ourselves. It was a lot for me to come here because I'm like, what can I tell these guys? These guys are real farmers. These people are real farmers. And I'm a social worker, really. And I have 243 teenagers, too. But what I know is I know the pride that I have when I can say that in spite of the fact that we have no money to buy seeds and we get seeds donated and everything that we have is donated, we are able to produce 100 tons of vegetables. But what I do get is criticism when I say I give them away. They say, well, why don't you have them pay a little bit? And I don't usually say what I mean, and that is, I remember what it was like to be able to try to buy food for my kids with that $3.10. And when that $3.10, what that meant when it was gone. It meant my kids were going to walk to school. It meant that I would walk to work. It meant that maybe our utilities wouldn't get paid. And so I think we have to be realistic and honest with ourselves to create a way for people to be able to work, to create work that people can do. Because I can tell you, when I tell the ex-offenders, I mean, this one guy who just worked with us for 10 years, his sister was in our program planting trees. When I first met her, she read at kindergarten level. But she was one of few women that I had met that were crack dealers. And so she was a business person, a good business person. She sold a lot of crack, and that's how she got busted. But then she came and got into our horticulture program. She got out. She went back to school. She started a nursery school, a daycare center. She got a license. Today she still is operating that. Her cousin was this man who came to work with us. For 23 years, this man and his family would call me wherever I was and say, Cathrine, you got to write and tell them, the parole board, that if my cousin gets out, that you would hire him. He was there for second-degree murder. He was 17 when him and his friends were robbing someone and someone was killed. After 23 years, this man came knocking, not knocking, he appeared at the gate. The deputy sheriff said, there's some guy here for you. I come down, and there's Vincent. I'd never met him. And he's crying and crying and crying, and he's like, they let me out. They let me out because they knew I had an opportunity to go forward and also to work with you. And they had confidence that you would keep me from recidivizing. 2 weeks ago, Vincent got a job with the city of San Francisco. He got a job as a laborer. And let me tell you, even though he was in jail for 23 years, he didn't know how to work. He didn't know what work was. He certainly didn't know what it was like to work on a farm or work outside or work with nature or work with other people that weren't trying to kill him. But Vincent learned how to work. He learned what work is. He learned what happens when people can appreciate working. But he also, while he was there, was a pastry chef for 23 years. So one day he mentions to me, well, you know, when I was in prison, I apprenticed with the pastry chef. Well, because it let me be out of the cell longer. And I was like, does that mean you can make things, bake things? He's like, yeah, I can bake anything. So we started last year baking pies, cakes that we give to our seniors and our folks as healthy desserts. But more importantly, this is a way for Vincent to say, I am sorry. I can do something that's worthwhile. I am somebody, because I have some contribution to make. And I guarantee, I might be wrong, Vincent's not going back to jail. And no one that Vincent knows is going back to jail. And that is because Vincent understands what he didn't understand at 17, and that is that he matters and that he has something to contribute. And so I think if we are going to make changes, we have to first tell very loudly the contribution that is made in places like this. And the only way that happens is, as people were saying, is to bring more people, different people here, and to you, and to what's happening in different parts of the community, because we are a community. And what I love is I love being able to say how incredibly powerful it is to see someone with nothing who's had horrendous experiences, horrendous understandings of what the world is about, to have them say, gee, today we cleared those invasive weeds, and I saw the blue butterfly that I was told needed the native plants that we planted. I did that. I did that, and the city of San Francisco is going to use the plants that we went out and made cuttings from to plant at other reservoirs, to plant in Yosemite. That we have acorns that we collected before, 3 years ago, there was a giant fire in Yosemite, the Rim Fire it's called. I was very proud of the fact that after the Rim Fire, San Francisco was able to turn their electricity back on based on our work because our fire break held. I wanted the mayor and everyone to tell everyone because I was so proud. But they said, Cathrine, you didn't do it by yourself. There's a lot of other folks doing it, and we couldn't just say you did it and they did it. And I was like, but you know, it would be really helpful for you to acknowledge that for 15 years, people with nothing but the opportunity to work made a difference. And when they made that difference, they were able to go forward and feel like they have something to give, and that they have some worth, and that they have some past and present and future that we all can say, gee, that's common to our experience. Because, as Amigo Bob was saying, of course, we are in it together, and we are going to stand together or fall together. And again, I came here because I could say this to someone, to you all. And I also came because I'm proud of what we're doing. And I know what we're doing works. And what it is work. It is the work of the Garden Project. To take people and plants and make changes. To take people and plants and be able to speak for them. That's why I'm here. To be able to speak for people and our plants who no one else speaks for. The teachers that call me, and are calling me right now, and saying, how many pumpkins can you get to us this year? And the officers, the cops that come and take the pumpkins and hand them out to the schools. A few years ago, when we had the pumpkins and the officers to give the pumpkins at the school, when they came to this particular school and started handing them out, the children dived under their desk and hid from the cops. Why? Because they were immigrants, many of them from immigrant families. And they thought it was the immigration people coming to get them. The officers were devastated. I remember this one officer just really being very upset. He was like, I was trying to show that this is law enforcement. Law enforcement is community building, is community giving back, is community helping. That's who we are. And your pumpkins help us to do that. Also right now, I know, we'll have more and more folks saying, can you get the vegetables to this pantry? I want to start a pantry there. And the only thing that limits us is our ability to do it without any funding to make it happen. But also because San Francisco, with all its enlightenment, doesn't understand that it has a farm that's part of the city, that we could make into a farm that functions as a farm, that feeds all the people who can't buy vegetables. And the people who can buy vegetables, perhaps they could buy some from us. And then maybe they could, that would bring us some income. But not if it's going to keep those seniors from getting the vegetables that they need. And so that's been my dilemma. How to do what we do, keep it going, expand it, tell the story, get the support. And I am here to ask you to do this. If you have the opportunity, for you to help me to say, people do want to work, all of us want to work. And working within nature is a good way to start. And what we need is the collective understanding that it's valuable, that it's not just my thing that I'm doing because I'm kind of nuts, but it's the thing that all of us have been doing and will continue to do. When I started the garden project, I started it with the idea that we plant a seed, and the seed will grow if the conditions are right. And so, working with the population that I have worked with, I've seen those seeds developed. After the summer program ends, in the last couple of years, at the suggestion of children, we hire many people who are their family members, their parents, their grandparents, who come and work with us. I have a group of those folks now. One of the men is a young man, he's 55 now, who was one of my kids when he was 18. And he's like, I remember you from then, and you haven't changed a bit. You continue to say, keep going, you could do it, you could do it. Do you ever say we can't do it? And I can't afford to say that. But again, to see this man and know that he survived, and also to hear from him that he learned when he was 18 that he could with his own hands make his life happen. That's an important thing for me. And I think it's an important thing for all of us. And so I think my time's up. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you're trying to make me cry, I probably will.
We have time for questions.
Okay, questions. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Several questions about your work. So what percentage of the inmates at the San Francisco jail are working on the garden project? Of those, have you been tracking the recidivism rate after they get out of prison? And number three, why don't the inmates, or do the inmates have an opportunity to eat some of the vegetables that they're growing, which to me, not that I'm discounting how you're using those and how you're giving those away, but it would close the connection or close the circle if the inmates are also eating of the vegetables that they're helping to cook. Those are my three questions.
Okay, that's very easy because we don't work with prisoners anymore. That was an easy answer. Seriously, we had prisoners in our program from 1982 to 1992. And the reason that we don't have prisoners now is because most prisoners that serve a county jail sentence, which is different than prison, are there or were there for drugs. Now, with changes in laws, that population isn't going to jail. They are instead going to prison at some point. And so basically we didn't have that population. And so in 1992 is when I began planting trees with ex-prisoners. And the Sheriff's Department has tracked the people that have left our program, the adults, and according to their recidivism study, 75% of the people that have worked with me do not return to jail as prisoners. And I had for this meeting, or on our website, there's a little video that someone did. And on the video is a young man that was also 18 in 1989. He also read at kindergarten level. He had been a drug dealer for so many years. That's all he knew. But he was calculating all those grams and whatever in his head, no calculator, and with the cops on him and with a smart kid. Anthony is now the labor supervisor for the water department. Anthony is negotiating $1 million, well, I think the budget for the labor department is, I would say, more than $100 million for the city. Anthony's negotiating those contracts now. Anthony's in charge of the laborers now. And what I know is that Anthony, with his 8 children, would have continued to go back to prison had I not said, no, Anthony, I'm not going to hire you because when you were in jail, I kicked you out because you were fooling around. And so if you're going to be serious, then come tomorrow. Anthony came tomorrow and went from there to now he has a job. And his kids haven't gone to jail. And so I think that answers the question. Any other questions? Sorry. Yes.
Familiar with Jeff Johnson, he's the head of planning in San Francisco. Just in the last 3, 4, 5 months, San Francisco has mandatory green roofs, Portland mandatory green roofs, Seattle mandatory green roofs, New York City mandatory green roofs, and Denver, Colorado mandatory green roofs. It says in response to the environmental degradation that's happened to the administration level. Green roofs require jobs. They require special jobs for people to be able to do that. So there is a feed through. I'm sure Jeff would be helpful in finding the money to see that that takes place.
Well, sorry.
Facebook, it is a giant green roof, acres green roof. They're building this is off from a Living Cities conference, but they're building a transportation hub in San Francisco right now, and it's 4 blocks, 8 blocks of city roof, a green roof with plantings. So they need people that know how to do that work, and it's good paying jobs, and I think it would help you.
Well, that's interesting because just like Anthony has a job, I saw John Thomas the other day, too. John Thomas is working with, working in, I believe it's the Google Kitchen. John Thomas, had you met him when he worked with me, or had you seen him, you would cross the street because that's who John Thomas was. But now John Thomas is working because of his work with us. And so many of the people do go on to work with these new industries and these new places. But during the summer, we take our kids to different places. They go sailing. We try to make sure they have different experiences. And we went to visit one place that has a giant food place for their staff. And they do a lot of games and God knows what. I'm sorry, I don't know what. But anyway, when I asked the guy whether or not any of our apprentices would be able to fit into being coders or whatever it is they're doing, he said no. Very plainly, no. And so, yes, they'll let us work on the roofs, let us work in their parking lots, but will they open up an opportunity so that kids, different kids, can have that other opportunity where the big money is? And I think that's where our challenge will be. But it will begin, hopefully, as they allow the John Thomas's work to work with them and not just in their kitchen, I think.